Good evening, and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we're closing out our 22nd year, during our half-hour shows, I interview writers about their craft, what they've done in the past, what they're working on, what they might plan for the future. We talk to other sorts of artists as well. We've talked to musicians, we've talked to actors, we've talked to sculptors, painters. It's a pretty wide net. It's not just writers. So if you have an idea for someone who might be good for the Writer's Block, please watch for our address at the end of the show. We'd be glad to hear your opinion about who might be good on the Writer's Block. I also want to ask you to watch, for the URL at the end of the program, theyatesgame.org. That's a play that premiered in Gloucester a few years ago. It's running at this very time in New York. You might be interested in following up on that address, theyatesgame.org. I'm happy to say tonight, for our last show for this 22nd year, we have two very special guests who are very important cultural and writing energizers here in Gloucester. And their influence extends, of course, to the whole of Cape Ann. The guests are Henry Ferrini and Charlie Bianchini, who are both involved in different capacities at the Gloucester Writers Center. Henry, who you may remember, has been on the show before. I think it was 13 years ago, so it's not too often to have him back. Was born in Boston and raised in different communities in New England. Before he came back to his real spiritual home, Gloucester, in 1973. He went to Springfield Classical High School and then later to Simon's Rock, Berkeley, and the University of Massachusetts. He is a filmmaker of some renown here and in the Northeast, and he is co-founder and president of the Gloucester Writers Center, which is based in Vincent Ferrini's former home in East Gloucester. Our second guest with Henry is Charlie Bianchini, who told me before the show she is a fourth-generation Lanesvillian. I think, is that the term, Lanesvillian? Yes. Born in Gloucester, or at least in Beverly, born and raised in Lanesville, went to school at Waring School in Beverly, and also to Skidmore in Saratoga Springs, New York. Interestingly, she spent some time in China and the Tibetan area of China after graduating. Since 2010, she's been back in Gloucester permanently, also back at her spiritual home. She is a board member at the Gloucester Writers Center and also teaches workshops in creative writing at the center. Henry and Charlie, thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for inviting us.
Henry, the Gloucester Writers Center it's a new institution, but it's really active. It's got a lot of publicity. See it in the paper, I see it on TV, see it online. Can you tell us what it is, where it is, and where you got the ideas?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, it's housed at 126 East Main Street, which was Vincent's home studio for years and years and years. And he wrote over 30 volumes of poetry out of that house. So it really has all the writers who have come to that house to be residents, who have worked there, have really noted that there is something in that place that allows for meditation and thought and writing and poetry. So it's for me, it's great to have saved that particular piece of real estate in Gloucester as a place for writing, and so it didn't turn into a nail parlor or a liquor store.
We should point out for anybody who might not know it, Vincent was
my uncle.
Yeah, and lived. That's almost right next to the
Richdale.
To the Richdale,
yeah.
If you're going east on the left side of Maine.
Right. It's a very unassuming little shack, but in that shack, so many different writers came to Vincent's home and talked about writing, and as well as Charles Olson, who was a longtime friend of Vincent's. So the place not only incorporates the spirit of Ferrini, but that of Charles Olson as well.
I know I was there about 6 weeks ago, and it was jam-packed with people and a lot of energy from those people.
Yeah,
It was
it's a great place to read.
fun to be there.
I'm glad that you had the opportunity to read there, because it's one of those places, if there's only 10 or 15 people in there, there's still electricity there. It's never, poetry readings don't draw a huge amount of people. It's an intimate spot for that type of activity to happen. And so...
I want to turn to our other guest here, Charlie Bianchini. Welcome to the Writer's Block as well.
Thank you.
How did you get involved with the Writers Center in East Gloucester, and what do you do over there?
Well, I've always been a writer. Since I can remember, maybe second grade, I started writing poetry. And it's a funny story how I came to the Writers Center. My father was very close with Vincent Ferrini. And so when he passed...
What was your dad's first name?
David Bianchini.
Okay.
They were very, very close friends. And when Vincent passed and we heard about what Henry and Annie Thomas wanted to do, it was very exciting for me. And it sort of stayed in the back of my mind as a place that I might get involved with later. I was very busy at the time. I was graduating college. I was traveling, trying to figure out what to do with my life. And when I came back to Gloucester after a year in China, that year was spent doing a lot of writing myself. I was very pleased to hear that the Writers Center was really up and coming and booming, and their programs were getting a lot of good feedback. So I was working at the Gloucester bookstore right downtown on Main Street, and I still work there. And a customer came in who is also a friend of mine, and she is a therapist in town. And she said, "Charlie, I have these clients who are really great writers, and they do this on their own, but they have no real outlet, no one to share it with. And you're a teacher, you're a writer. What would you say about teaching a class for them? They can't afford to pay you, but what would you say to teaching?" And I loved the idea. And I thought, okay, well, where would the outlet be for that? Of course, the Gloucester Writers Center. Yes. So I came to Henry and Annie and said, what about this idea? And they said, great. And we have since started a women's group that has been going on since, I think, late May, early June. And we meet once a week, and I give them prompts, and they write, and we critique each other, and we give each other feedback. And I've seen these beautiful women just blossom into beautiful writers.
So your project for later wasn't too much later?
No,
It was just,
no, yeah.
No, we're very
Yeah.
fortunate to have Charlie working over there.
Thank you.
And, not with just a women's writing group, but with a high school writing group and with a kids writing group. So we're really covering many different demographics in Gloucester, and those programs are beginning to grow, and so it's great to just see it developing.
So can you give us a little history course here, Henry? When was it actually formed? And I assume it's a 501c3.
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
Yeah, it was, well, the origin really, Vincent died on Christmas Eve of 2007. And at that time, I wanted to do something as a memorial to the years that he spent in Gloucester and the years he spent writing about this place. And I felt that a writer's center would be the best way of doing that. Unfortunately, at the time, I tried to raise money for it and wasn't able to come up with what was necessary. This was at the peak of the housing bubble, December of 2007. And the house was on his daughter, who owned the place, was on the market for too much money. I went out and tried to raise some dough, and I did, but it wasn't nearly enough to purchase the place. So I thought, well, I'll put this money into doing something else.
I know at that time people were saying that nothing in Gloucester would be under $1 million pretty soon if we kept going that way.
Right. So it was a ridiculous amount, but fortunately for us, for the Writers' Center, this would not have if the bubble had not have popped, if it didn't pop, we would not have the Writers' Center.
Think Vincent was involved in that?
We'll have to find that out. But so what happened if we fast forward a couple of years to April of 2009, a friend of Annie Thomas, who was the co-founder of the Writers' Center, was a longtime friend of Vincent's for years and years. And this friend, Paul Sawyer, who was a Unitarian Universalist minister in California, sorry about that, called us and said, Henry, I'm dying of pancreatic cancer, and I have about 4 months to live. And I want you to help me turn Vincent's house into a writer's center. And I'm going to call Annie and ask her if she'll help you.
It's out of the blue?
Yeah. And, I had already spent a couple years trying to raise money and had given it up and just said, forget it, I'm not going to do this any longer. But when he called me up, there was new energy there. And in 3 months, we raised the amount of money to buy the house for its new price because the price went down. So it was quite an amazing
So when did
event.
you incorporate?
We incorporated in August of 2010.
So
And we got our 501c3 and very shortly after that.
And the mission statement says you're going to dedicate it to
It's
writing and
it's dedicated to all our diverse voices and the artistic and creative spirits of Gloucester, and to also maintain, in the spirit of the work that Vincent and Charles Olson forwarded.
On the subject of writing, I want to get back to you, Charlie. The purpose of the Writers' Center is to promote writing and to get people writing, and you're having success doing that in a period where most of the writing done is texting. And people say that writing programs are, in the tank, and we can't get people to read. And is that true? And if it's true, is there hope?
I think that maybe reading on paper is dying, but there are so many outlets for reading online. So, and people are always willing to read, always wanting to read. I don't think it's dying. I don't think that writing is dying. And I think through the Writing Center, we can promote writing as a way to live better. And that form of expression, I think, helps people get through their lives better. I know I couldn't live without it.
Well, now, you told me your major was not
It wasn't
creative
writing. It wasn't creative writing. However, there was a lot of writing involved, American Studies. So I definitely learned how to write in college and in high school a bit too. But I've always...
And in second grade, too.
And in second, yeah, well, that's when I started thinking about it. But I definitely honed my skills in college. And when I was abroad, I wrote almost every day and kept a blog. And my blog got read, not just by friends and family, but also by people who I had no idea were there. So there is an outlet.
And the people you meet and who are involved in workshopping with are concerned with writing and see themselves fulfilled in writing and
I
like
think
it,
so.
love writing.
I think so. Yeah. The women's group, they come in very tentative and scared, and in my high school group too. We had a new member last night, and very tentative. But by the end of the class, she was reading her work to us, and they slowly get comfortable, and they get comfortable in their voice, and they blossom.
And these classes and the events are in the house.
They are. Charlie's class, she had the high school class last night, and if there are high school kids out there interested in, working on their writing, give us a call because this class is growing. So or go to our website.
This is a good chance to mention the website address.
Yeah.
What is the website address?
It's gloucesterwriters.org.
Gloucester Writers.
Yeah, no apostrophe, just gloucesterwriters.org.
Plural, not a gloucesterwriters.org, and all the information is on that. And high school students and others can contact you about it if they're interested in writing. They don't have to be Gloucester High. They could be anywhere in Cape Ann, or even outside. Foreigners.
I have a student from Peabody.
Really?
So, yes.
A foreigner.
Which is great.
That's great. That's great. And adults as well.
Yes, and we have there's one program that's run by Terry Weber, who is a journalist and is working on a local journalist and is working on a number of different writing programs, and she has a program for writers who are interested in being published, and she has the program is filled now. But this is the type of stuff that we're going to continue to offer. So, if people are interested in writing, they should definitely be reading our at our website or blog.
You brought with you, I think, a copy of a
This is our little newsletter
your
here.
newsletter. How often does the newsletter come out?
Well, we try to do it twice a year. Yeah.
Let me hold that up.
Yeah.
This is the newsletter for the Gloucester Writers Center. I'm going to hold this up.
Maybe the other side there. Yeah. And that's also available online. You can go to gloucesterwriters.org and read it. So.
I also wanted to mention that those who are not only interested in taking classes, but those who are interested in teaching classes, we are interested in bringing you in. Those people in to start more programs or continue another section of the same program that we're offering.
I know from my experience with nonprofits, one of the elephant in the room topic is always donations, because this kind of thing takes money. You gotta heat the house in the winter in Gloucester. That alone is a big bill. On the website, is there an option to donate, and can people help with money or in kind or in other ways to keep the Writers Center going?
Yeah, absolutely. There on the website, there is a donate button if people are so inclined. Yes, we do. We're a grassroots organization. We function by people who believe in us, and also from grants and so forth. We're fortunate that we have it's a small enough organization. It's a small building. So that is helpful, but we're pushing to grow so that we can do more, programming and offer more to the community. But right now we're right at we're in the nascency of the whole thing, and it's developed. It's interesting how it is beginning to grow. Charlie has done lots of, the educational part is even newer than, the building and the fact that we've had, 13 writers in residence at the house, and that's another part of the programming, where a writer will come in for a week and work on his or her stuff, and then present a program a lecture, a talk to the community for their time being able to work there. There's a Native American woman, Susan Deercloud, a poet from upstate New York, who will be there in April, and she'll be doing a program for the public.
They live in the house?
They live in the house. Yeah.
Oh, I should say, we're being broadcast here in late winter 2012. So in 6 weeks or a month or so, what is her name?
Susan Deercloud.
Deercloud.
Yeah.
Will be an artist in residence.
She will, yeah.
So the organization for late winter 2012 is about a year and a half old. And so you're expanding quickly and finding your way around. Who else is involved as administrative personnel or other teachers? Although you're on the board as well, so you're administrative and teaching. You get both sides of the coin.
There are so many people, and I mean that's one of the things that makes the Writers Center so unique.
Tell us some of them. Well, even you might miss some, but give us some names.
Peter Higgins is our treasurer. As I said, Annie Thomas is the co-founder, and we work tirelessly on this. She's also the clerk of the organization. Peter Anastas, Charlie, Kate Colby is a writer who came to Annisquam. She lives in Providence now, but she came to Annisquam as a child. She's a poet she's on our board. Wendy Fitting, Gregor Gibson, Dorothy Shubo Nelson, who is a poet who taught at UMass Boston for many, many years. She's now retired.
Reverend Wendy Fitting,
and Reverend Wendy Fitting,
who was at the
right,
Universalist.
Right. And we have and Andre Spears, who is a writer from New York City, who is also on our board. So we have a heavy local contingent, but also a national group. But we also on our advisory board, and we have some prestigious people as well, like the writer Jim Harrison, and Mark Kurlansky, and Ann Waldman, and Ed Sanders, and Diane DePrima, and Andre Kodrescu, who we brought to Gloucester last August. Fred Dewey, Shahir Brahm, and Amiel Alcalay. So
it's an impressive lineup.
Yeah, we've got a lot of really wonderful help out there.
I can't believe it's so quick, but I just got the 5-minute signal already. I want Charlie, I want to go to you and ask, so we can get our viewers to get a feel for what it would be like to be in a class there. If they wanted to workshop, but they're timid, they don't want to share their poem. What do you do? What's a lesson or
what's an hour in class? Yeah. Well, we usually start the class with what's called a free write, which is when you sit down and I'll give you a small prompt, either a short phrase or write about this object on the table. And they're supposed to not pick up their pens and pretty much just write anything that comes to mind.
Not lift the pen off the paper.
Yeah, just keep writing, even if you have to write a word over 50 times or your name 50 times. It's just a way to start getting the juices flowing, so to speak.
I like that idea. The writer's block is not allowed.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
I don't believe in writer's block. I think it's always
there.
I don't
either.
Yeah.
Except for this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll start with a free write, and then I'll give them a more specific prompt, something to work on. For instance, in the women's group, we've been working on character development, writing about people, describing people, and dialogue, how to write dialogue. So I've had them go out and observe dialogues between other people and try and write them down. That was their quote-unquote homework.
Good. So people need not be shy.
No.
You tell them what they do, and you don't go in and ask them what Melville's birthday was, or anything. Not a literary test.
Not at all.
You can relax and write.
Yes, the key is to write.
About 2 minutes ago, I got the 3-minute signal, so I'm going to have to begin to wrap up. It was an excellent show because it seemed fast. That's always a sign of a good show. Henry Ferrini, I want to thank you for being on the show and for co-founding the Gloucester Writers Center, because I know it's doing wonderful work. And
Thank you.
Charlie Bianchini for being a board member and also for teaching writing and believing in writing as I do. I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And for doing all that. I want to thank you in TV land too for watching the Writer's Block. If you've learned something about the functioning and the founding of the Gloucester Writers Center this evening, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next year on the Writer's Block. Good night.